Hello, Dionne. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can. Thanks.
Love to hear about the situation in the Central African Republic.
Sure. So I kind of more or less stumbled into the Russia series here with a when after I was West Africa bureau chief and I was covering 25 countries, and I had heard about the murders of three Russian journalists in the Central African Republic. But at the time, I was pretty caught up in the war in Nigeria against Boko Haram, and that was just my area of focus for the moment. And by the time I kind of turned my attention back to the Central African Republic, I'd never been there before. There had been Russian outlets and others who had tried to investigate those murders and found nothing. And I kind of didn't really feel like I could add to that story. I mean, I wasn't going to go in if the Russians and the Central African Republic government were both complicit in covering up those murders, which it looked like maybe something weird was going on. I didn't really feel like I was going to be able to waltz in there and crack the case. So, but I was wrapping up my stint in West Africa and heading back to America to cover the elections, and had heard from a photographer friend who had been there on assignment, one who I work with pretty closely, Ashley Gilbertson, and he had called me from there because he was on assignment for doing like a humanitarian work or working for an NGO, a quick assignment there, and had been out to some refugee camps and had seen a woman in a displaced persons camp, and had seen a woman selling onions by the quarter. Like she was so poor, both she was so poor and her buyers were so poor that they could only afford, to buy a quarter of an onion. And was really moved by that. And I had always that was kind of stuck in the back of my head. I'm like, okay, before I leave West Africa, I'm going to go to the Central African Republic. And I was really nervous about going. I didn't really want to wade into the Russian situation at all. I was pretty terrified because they had killed people there. We allegedly, we were worried that they had killed people there. And so I decided I would just go and write about the peace agreement was happening and with rebel forces. And it seemed like a good opportunity to go tell a humanitarian story. There was a bit of a news hook with the situation. So I went without any intention of all of getting involved in Russian activities or reporting on that, and went to a pediatric hospital, went to a refugee camp, and then, everywhere I went, the Russian interference or just presence, I guess, was so in your face, billboards, T-shirts, like guys walking around with "I love Russia" or something on their, on their backs. And it was everywhere. But most obvious were the white pickup trucks of Russians roaming around town, all crammed in the back of the truck, at 5 a.m. with weapons. And they were just everywhere. It was unavoidable. And so I just slowly started, collecting a little bit of reporting, and everywhere I went and people would talk about it. Oh yeah, I see them in the bars. And then just kind of cobbled together little bits and pieces, meeting with diplomats, to talk about the humanitarian situation, and then weaseling in a couple of questions about Russia in the end. And then started sort of collecting an assortment of warlords. And it just seemed interesting. The warlords were really involved in the peace agreement and becoming part of the government. And so I had a reason to talk to them. And that didn't have anything to do with Russia. And my fixer was too afraid to show his face to them or to even call them for me. So he basically just gave me his Rolodex of warlord cell phone numbers. And I called various warlords and took a taxi with Ash, the photographer, and we just showed up in the living room or the compound of various warlords and talked to them. And they just would start volunteering things about the Russians and how the Russians had, how Prigozhin had shown up at this conference in, I think it was in Sudan, where he helped negotiate the peace process. It was some of the first things that they talked about were the Russian involvement. And then these warlords also were involved in diamond trafficking, which is a huge issue there. And we started talking to diamond dealers who also, had involvement with Russians. And really, it was kind of a subcontext of every conversation I had with everyone. And I did the bulk of my reporting really after I left. I mean, I didn't call the Russians for comment when I was there or anything. I was really afraid. And so I kind of laid the groundwork and built up source relationships when I was on the ground. And then really, really delved in and asked more pointed questions and had help from our Moscow bureau too. But to start getting more sources and talking to more people after I was out of the country and safe. It's and that trip really on its own was one of the wildest trips, even without the Russians. I mean, I was on a prop plane that was forced down by lightning, and that was, I think, the third scariest thing that happened to me that day. So, we were tailed by security forces, encounters with drunk police, almost attacked by an angry mob with bricks, and none of that had to do with the Russians. So it was a pretty, it's a crazy place. And, but I really felt a lot of compassion for the people there, and did end up doing a couple humanitarian stories also about a pediatric hospital, and just other stories about displaced people that I really feel like were just as relevant as the Russian reporting too.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I was struck so much in your story. One of the themes that just sort of emerged out of it was just the unbelievable ruthlessness of the Russians. I mean, the way they're backing up the national government there, and the fact that it's not a normal influence peddling thing. I mean, they were like running the show.
Yeah, I mean, they really were. And, they were taking advantage of a country that's been in crisis for many, many years.
Right.
And, and a country that's so, so poor. And the people, I mean, they were paying bribes outright. I had a list of, like, basically a receipt of all that a source gave me of all the people in parliament who had received a bribe to vote for a particular politician. And I remember my editor saying, like, why did they keep a receipt of that? And I'm like, it's just like what they do. They want to know, like, who did what. And so, it's just a very vulnerable population. I think that's what, all our reporting has shown, is that, the Russians also take advantage of the vulnerable.
Exactly. In whatever state they're in.
Yeah.